Okay, so as mentioned before, there's a lot of red here, red being good, so the focus is what remains to be done. And this overall map um, is really just there's just four areas to focus on. So we have up here the hardened site, which is unique in that it's powered. We're still working on it, but it's powered and the microwave is already up and running, linking all the sites up in the north. The reason I show it as powered and yet still active because we still have some things to do. We got to build the fence and we got to do some other stuff that are specific to the needs of the neighbors in that area. So, but the site itself has the power, and we've gotten the microwave working. So there's just more work to be done. But overall, it's actually an active site. And then over here we have this was the last remaining lease site that we had that we're trying to get rolling on, and that's rolling. Actually, we have some activity starting, but again, that was pretty much the only one that didn't have power at the time, and we're still working on that. All the others, everything that was green is red, and we have one site down here that is actually built, but it's just again waiting for power for that particular site. And then up north, we have the Rock Rapids site, which hadn't started yet, and we're actually about to start next week.
You're about to get snowed on.
Yes, yes. Wear boots and heavy clothing. All right, so these are the sites of interest. Again, Rock Rapids, Calhoun, Hardin, and Keosauqua. Again, what's going on in Keosauqua? It's a specific need for the power company down there. So we had to order a specific transformer that needed to be installed in order to split the power there. My understanding in talking with our sub is that that's come in and we're looking at doing this work next week. Okay, so here's proof that the Hardin Tower really is there with the shelter. So again, has always been a challenging site. It's in the top of a hill. So it was a lot of work to get all this stuff up there. There's a lot of sensitivities. So we're working with locals there to make sure that we address all the concerns and the additional risks and whatnot. But like I said, the site is there. You can see the dish is there. The site is powered, so we're using it. So when we come to the summary table, the numbers keep on getting smaller and smaller. So the one site that's not started, again, is in Region 3, which is a Rock Rapids site. The two civils that are active, that's the Hardin site and the Calhoun site. And then the one that we're waiting for power is the Keosauqua site down south. For coverage testing, all of these counties identified in green have been coverage tested already. Including down here, what I showed here, this is Polk County, so that's the capital area. Just had to show it a little bit different there. So we've come to a halt, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but basically all of these sites that are gray will be coming up pretty soon. All these counties will be ready for testing pretty soon, with the exception of this one, these four, which I'll explain in a moment. So right now we're at 99.3% success rate. We've tested about 50,000 tiles. 5% failure. If we were allowed 5% failure, which is the math, we'd be at about 2,500 tiles failed. We've only failed 300 tiles. So far we're pretty good shape. And again, the tiles that failed have been pretty much where we expected them to, because we're not making any distinction. We're testing wherever we can drive, basically. So we're not saying if we don't show coverage, we don't drive it. We still drive it as long as there's a road that we can get through. Okay, so going back to the overalls, I wanted to show, as I show in the previous slide, all the gray areas. So I wanted to focus on the gray area so you can understand what's driving that. So in the middle, here's one of the gray areas. What I wanted you to notice is that the reason we haven't tested all of that there is because of the Hardin site and the KTIN Fort Dodge site. So 2 sites is preventing us from testing all of those counties. And again, it's not because these sites are critical to all of the counties, but these sites provide coverage to adjacent counties as well. So even though there might be a primary site somewhere else, but when we do our drive testing, we test in the counties and we look for all of the adjacent sites that support that county. So in some cases it's 6, in some cases it's 2, and everything else in between. Up there in the northwest, again, it's just the Rock Rapids site. Doesn't mean that there's no coverage on the other 3 counties. There is, but we don't want to test it until we get Rock Rapids, because Rock Rapids also provides overlap in those counties too. In the southwest, again, we got 6 counties, and we haven't tested those just because because of the local enhancement happening in Page County right now. So we had to reconfigure some things down there. We're waiting for that piece to be completed. Once that's completed, then we can test all of that, the cluster of 6 counties down there. Again, not that there's not coverage, because all of the surrounding sites are active and functional, but we want to make sure that when we look at all the surrounding counties and we say it's 6 sites or 4 sites or whatever it is, we want to make sure that all those sites are active so we can execute the coverage testing. In the southeast, again, it's really just the Keosauqua site. A little bit there, it was Davis as well, but we got power in Davis, so we moved on with Davis. But really just the Keosauqua site. Once you get power with Keosauqua, we'll optimize that site, and we'll be able to test the cluster of 8 sites down there, 8 counties, should I say. And then on the eastern side of the state, it's Dubuque, Scott, and Muscatine. Again, Scott and Muscatine is the replacement of the antennas that we had there. We have them, and we're actually going to be installing them this Saturday, is a plan. So once that happens, that cluster, and then we're working on Dubuque right now. Dubuque is a member of a simulcast cell, so we need to optimize that with the Holy Cross site so that they're both synchronized together. So when you look at this, hopefully this helps clear out that, it's not a big number of sites, but when you look at it and you say, well, gee, that's a lot of counties, why not? It's just a couple of sites can have that impact. Okay, so again, the build continues. The 2 active sites, one to start in the near future, which is the Rock Rapids. We have people going up there next week to start the process. We decided to build a brand new twin tower instead. So that's going to be complicated because it's a TV broadcasting site, so we got to do a lot of coordination, and it's going to be a twin tower, what we call a twin tower, which is a like-for-like replacement. We're going to replace the existing guide tower that they have there today with a duplicate guide tower that can handle all the load and then some. But they're going to be close to each other, so we got to be careful with all the guide wires. So there's definitely a lot of coordination to make this one happen. So this will be a slow one because of all the caution needed and all the coordination needed to make it happen. The microwave paths, we just continue with alignments of those, so that's an ongoing process. All the DPS dispatch centers, we're preparing for cutover. So we did all of the electrical UPS preparations for that, and we've installed 1 operator position in each one of those dispatch centers just to make sure that we're ready and the configuration is correct and whatnot, so that when we're ready, then we go in and just start moving the old computers out, put the new computers in. We're almost complete with the re-optimizing of the 700 megahertz. The only one that remains is the Scott and the Muscatine site, which is really just a replacement of the antennas. Once we do that, we'll be done with rechannelizing of all the sites. The last thing I want to bring to your attention is the wind farms, and I have it here with a red warning sign. We've been aware of the wind farms since we've been working on the project, and a lot of some of our sites we kind of weave our path through the wind farms as well. But the wind farms keep on appearing. So, in particular, I-80, as I'm driving home, all of a sudden those started popping up pretty quickly, and a lot of them, and that was kind of a big concern for me. So we took a look, and we have a site in Brooklyn which connects to the Newton Department of Corrections, and that one is, as you can see here, there's I-80. This is the one that kept me awake at night because I was worried that their wind farms was going to break our path. So we took a look. It took a while to figure out how to get the data, but we have our engineer that knows how to deal with all that, and he was able to pull all the data and find that there was one particular tower that was concerned, which was pretty close to our path. So according to the data, at least it was about 200 feet away from our path. But I was still nervous about that because it's a paper study, and we wanted to go out there and make sure, because depending on the survey and depending on the application, you have a center point where you're going to put the tower, but there can be movement, in some cases as much as 200 feet. So I went out there, and this is a Brooklyn tower. And I stood by the Brooklyn Tower and looked with binoculars that have a little compass built in so you can see the azimuth and whatnot. And from there, I could see this is a tower that was showing on our paper study that was of concern. Our path actually turns out it goes out in this direction. If you see this little post here, it actually goes in this direction over here, over this building. So we got lucky, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because I believe that the board should be working with the state legislatures, governor's office to figure out a way to protect your investment. Because I'm assuming that the wind farms are going to continue popping up, and the last thing you want is for these things to break your paths.
Can you explain what would happen if, pull up your microwave shots if you would from your first slide. I brought this up maybe 6 months ago as a concern, but I want to see the microwave shots that you have here show our grid. I mean our network.
Oh, the overall network?
Yeah. That one. Yep. So let's just say, and these wind farms will continue, let's just say they, for some odd reason, they put it in a path. Show the board, and I know what will happen, but show the board what the effect is when a path or two paths get broke at any one of these links. Sure.
So in this case, this is the Brooklyn site. This is the Department of Corrections site. This is the path that I was concerned about because the wind farm is basically it becomes in essence about a mile-long wall, if you will. So we need to make sure that if we have to go through one, which we do, like we do for the Hardin site up here. As a matter of fact, that was one of the reasons why the Hardin site was so difficult because even though we work with the property owner, our neighbor, to try to relocate that site, any movement created a problem with the wind farms because we're going right through a wind farm. So in this case, if this path was to be broken, Then there's obviously, because we have loops, we go around that to go in different directions, or around this way to go in different directions. So one of the things that I'm actually doing is, because I'm concerned about that too, is I'm actually installing another path that goes between these two sites here to provide an added level of protection. So we're going to have a path that goes from, this is Marion to Newton, and then we're also going to go from Hooper to the Madison site. So we're just adding that additional there because I wanted to have another extra sense of protection there just in case. But in essence, what happens is when the paths get broken, because these are microwave loops, we basically just go around in the other direction to make it there.
Does that site go into site trunking then?
No,
If two links get broke,
it all depends on where on the ring.
what's the worst case scenario?
The worst case scenario is that the site goes into site trunking.
So are they required when they build a wind farm, just like we do with frequencies, to see if there's anything in between?
So what I found, and this is what I have down here. So what I found is that some of them do look into the PCNs, but it's not required by law. And so that may explain why they have that near miss. I mean, it was close enough, but not enough to impact us. But we don't know that for sure. So from my perspective, there needs to be work between this body and the legislature to protect that investment. The other part to that is there needs to be some kind of a mechanism for collaboration and beyond that, approval, right? So that normally when microwave tower is being built, the neighbors get a letter that says, hey, we're going to build this microwave shot, it's sort of a warning, and you get to look at it and provide some feedback. I don't believe that's being done for the wind farms, and it should, because that way, at least for the ISICS system, if there was a letter that went to this body, then your technical team can take a look at it and make sure that it's going to be okay. And if it's not, again, at least it gives them the ability to move that, wherever that tower, to move it around to avoid that impact before they actually start building it.
Okay.
So there needs to be law so it has teeth to enforce that, because if it isn't, then there's no guarantee that you're going to get that letter or anything, and you might find in the future that your site is now being affected by it.
So with that being said, what I'd like to do with Jason's help and approval also, and your buy-in and the board's buy-in, is to create a subcommittee here to investigate this, chaired by Miss Sandy Black. I think you could probably help us with
Second that.
Yeah, I've done a lot of stuff at the.
Yeah, if you could form a committee for that, and something document that you could present, that we can draft, and that we could present to either for legislation with our senators that are on our board, and or the Iowa Utilities Board, to make them aware of our network.
Yeah, I just
So-
did a cursory, I'm sorry. Just did a real cursory read. Not working. I just did a real quick cursory review, and in one county in the northwest area of Iowa, they're just, by 2020, they're going to have 121 more built. Alliant Energy is spending $1.8 billion just in that area there alone. And we absolutely need to have some kind of cooperation between us so that they're not messing with our microwave paths.
Would you be willing to chair that group?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think it's very important that we keep our system healthy, for sure. And it's just something you don't think about. Not only is the wind farm, I think the cell tower coming. Or, you got FirstNet being built, all kinds of stuff's going on here. And I'm assuming the cell companies do microwave shots also if they don't have the backhaul in the ground, right? So, good information. Thank you, Sandy.
That's all I had.
cells typically lower than?
Yeah, cell towers tend to be around 180 foot height. Our towers are a lot taller. We're on average between 300 and 400 feet. And that's because our microwave shots are long. So the longer the distance, the higher the tower needs to be. So if we were to say, like, let's say in California, and they say, well, gee, you know, environmental regulations require that you have to have them no taller than 200 feet, then the amount of towers that you would need would about double. So that's the reason why we have our towers are pretty tall, you know, in comparison.
Yeah, my reason for clarifying that was I think the telcos have a pretty strong lobby, and if we're asking all the phone companies to cooperate, that may be a taller order than if we're just concerned or primarily concerned with the wind towers, which have a greater height and therefore a greater threat to our microwave link.
Right.
Can I make a comment?
The probabilities for a cell tower to interfere with us are a lot smaller because our dishes are a lot higher. But the wind farms, because they basically form a wall, those are the ones that are difficult to deal with.
Our batteries are dying on these. Thank you. He said too. I don't touch it. So I do have a comment on that. Two things. The wind turbines usually run about 325 feet.
Mhm.
And then the thing that we do have in our favor is that if they're causing interference, right, they can't cause interference, even if it's a modulation interference to existing or anybody's systems. It's against FCC rules, so that we will have in our favor. Do you disagree?
Correct, but that would be, interference would be with regards to emissions. And in our case is a physical blockage of the path. Now, what helps is that the blades are now mostly fiberglass, which helps. There's a core to it though that it's not. So it kind of depends on, you know, where we hit. I mean, we could probably still go through a path that's blades in it and still be okay. But again, it depends on the specifics of that particular wind farm, how they design the blades and whatnot.
You said earlier that you guys were able to get some information about where they're located.
Correct.
Can you pass that on to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
The only warning is that it took our engineer a couple of days to not just get the information, but to make it somewhat usable for that particular area. It's not nicely organized, so the way it's organized, it's like well, I won't even go through it. It's kind of painful, but I'll make sure that we follow up with you guys and let you know how we found that information.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.